You know, you'd think after 15 years that we would readdress the visa program. 9/11, 19 hijackers came here and they all used our legal visa program. Several of them came as students, but they really weren't going to school. Several of them came as visitors and they weren't really visiting. And then a couple of them actually were on the CIA watch list and still got a visa somehow to come here. Two of them in San Diego were actually living with an FBI informant for a year. So we've got a lot of problems, not really with terrorists coming here illegally, but with terrorists coming here legally. So unless we have a better handle on this, I think it's a very reasonable thing to talk about. Let's put the immigration on pause from about 34 countries that have radical Islamist threats. And then let's try to develop a system where we know 100% of the time who comes, how long they're staying, and then when they're leaving. But let's also do a background check on them before they come. I think this makes so much sense. We spend hundreds of billions of dollars on the war on terror, but we're not willing to do anything to protect our borders.
Exactly. And this, of course, I mean, basically you're asking just for an improvement of or really not so much an improvement, but let's have a vetting system. With the Boston bombers, we didn't vet them so well, and our government gave them entitlements. So not only were they here and supposed to be on some sort of watch list, but they were getting welfare.
Yeah, and it's not only the Boston terrorist. We also had two Iraqi refugees in my hometown, Bowling Green, Kentucky, who came through the refugee program. And then it turns out one of them had fingerprints on a bomb fragment in Iraq. And then they tried to buy Stinger missiles in my town, and we caught them. But the thing is, they were already in the database, and nobody's bothering to do the research. It's like we're all so politically correct that we think everyone in the world has a right to travel to our country. Well, no one outside of the United States has a right to travel to our country. And people, I think, somehow have even become confused about the Constitution. The Constitution's silent on what our rules would be with regard to immigration. And there have been times when we've been at war where we've greatly reduced immigration.
Yes, absolutely. And we've seen how that works as well. This idea that I have seen growing, particularly amongst the left. And, you know, I've even seen this amongst some more moderate Republicans that somehow, and you mentioned it briefly in your answer just then, that people who are not citizens of this country, that they have a right. Apparently that's a new right that's just been created in the past few years. They have a right to be able to just come to the United States on their terms as opposed to our terms. I mean, we're a sovereign country, and sovereign countries have the right to be discriminatory in who they accept, and not just for national security, but also, you know, do you want someone that, you know, maybe has terror ties, or someone who's a doctor? I mean, it's simple.
Well, and the thing is I think what we're developing is two extremes. You have one extreme where Trump wants to have a religious test, and I don't like the idea of a religious test. But on the other extreme, you have someone like Hillary Clinton who refuses to admit that an extreme aberration of religion does have something to do with this. She won't even mention the words radical Islam. So I think you could restrict and restrain and study immigration, but base your basis for restricting immigration based on a threat or how significant the threat of terrorism coming from certain countries or parts of the world. And I think what you'd find is we put it on pause, and if you want to restart it, fix the system.